It's interesting that Bill Gates literally could save the planet if climate change is the risk that people say. Bill Gates could save the planet. I don't believe, or at least I've never heard of this happening, that Bill Gates has ever had a meeting with President Trump while he's president to talk about nuclear power. I don't believe they've ever met to talk about that subject. I'm sure they've met at some point in the past. Yeah. So if they did, that would give Trump all of the, let's say, intellectual cover he would need to go full-throated pro-nuclear. The moment he does it, he wins re-election. And I wouldn't say that about any other topic. There's no other button that's as stark as this one, because it takes climate change off the table, and it's sort of all they got, right?
Yeah.
Because their only scary thing is climate change, and you can't win without scaring the other team. So if you take the scare away, they're disarmed. And the president could do that, but he's got to bring in either a Michael Schellenberger, he's got to bring in a Bill Gates, ideally both of them, and then use that meeting, publicize the meeting, and then after the meeting do a statement. Bill Gates is standing next to you, and you say, I just met with Bill Gates. I got to say, he's very persuasive. Bill, tell us what we talked about. Or tell the people what. Then Bill Gates gets up there and goes, well, and says essentially what I said, which is nuclear is the only way forward, and it's the new stuff that'll bring us there. And then the president says, Bill Gates says this is the way to go. And Bill, would you agree with me that you should do this no matter what you think about climate change? And then Bill Gates says, absolutely, because he would. Because nuclear is the right solution either way. At that point, the election's over. When you talk about climate change, there's no such thing as the government. There are just lots of government entities with different opinions. And some of them have been that it's going to be too cold and some that it's too warm. I don't subscribe to the theory that because they've been wrong 50 years in a row, which I think is roughly true, the climate predictions have been wrong 50 years in a row. I don't subscribe to the fact that therefore it's wrong now. Matt. I'm good. You have a question for me?
Three things. One's a suggestion. Professor Richard Muller, Berkeley, he's a physics professor, very pro-nuclear.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of him, but
no.
Very pro-nuclear for a long time. Has innovative solutions for disposing of the waste. So.
Okay, that was just a suggestion for what?
A guest.
Oh, a guest. Okay. All right. And you had a question?
Or speaking of nuclear, sorry. Do you think Trump is purposely not talking about it? So during the general election, when asked why aren't we doing something about climate change, he can just go, I've been trying to fix it for 4 years. What have you been doing?
Well, I'll tell you what I know. I know that within the White House and certainly within the administration, people are pro-nuclear. And I know that Rick Perry in the Department of Energy, is that the official name? But he's funded through the Department of Energy new testing facilities for nuclear fuels and some, I think he's also funding some carbon capture technologies, et cetera. So within the administration, they are actually doing what look like exactly the right things. I don't know if they're doing enough of it or it's big enough, but they're certainly doing the right things. That's unambiguously true. So Rick Perry's sort of nailing it over there. It's funny, because Trump is president, he gets all the attention, but he's got some cabinet type people who are really killing it. Rick Perry is one, and Health and Human Services is another, that are just really knocking the ball out of the park lately. They should get more attention.
Just putting this out there, maybe not getting a lot more attention is what's allowing them to do so well, because no one's yelling at them or saying they're this, that, or the other.
Yeah, maybe their lack of attention is what's helping them. That's true. All right, so now the question is why Trump is I know he's mentioned nuclear, but it seems like it's always at the sort of end of a long paragraph. Yeah, nuclear power. That's your impression of it too, right?
Yeah, it's kind of
He's
like never mentions it, but it's obviously there.
here's my hypothesis, because I've been puzzled by it myself. Because the day that Trump says out loud, nuclear energy is the right answer with or without climate risk. If he says a sentence like that, the election is actually over. Let me say that as clearly as possible. If Trump ever comes out and says in clear language, the climate risk is something that people will always disagree with. But the one thing that what the Democrats and the Republicans, at least the ones who have looked into it, because Cory Booker, Yang, Biden, they're all pro-nuclear. A lot of folks are pro-nuclear. Bill Gates is. So Trump could say, the one thing that we know is the smart thing to do, no matter how big the risk is we should be as aggressive with nuclear as we possibly can. And look, we've already started in the Department of Energy. We've done these things. It's the way to go. Will you join me? And it'll take care of my problem, which is keeping the economy running, keeping energy costs low, which is basically a raise for everybody. If you lower energy costs, every low-income person just got a raise because they don't have
quality of living increase.
Quality of living, right. So if the president came out and said, look, I'm going to build you a world with the best technology. The current generations of nuclear power have never had a problem. We do know how to figure out how to store waste and process it, et cetera, and we can get better at it as well. Join me in solving all of our problems. I'd like the economy to be humming. I'd like the low-income people to get a raise. And I'd like to have enough energy. I want clean air. I want clean water, and nuclear gives me all of those things. If you're concerned also about climate risk, I can solve that for you without even paying attention to it. In other words, having a robust nuclear program is sort of the only way you can solve climate risk if you believe that's a real risk.
Yeah, and that's why I was wondering, do you think he's keeping it in his back pocket when they come after him for climate change?
Let me just finish the thought. I don't believe that President Trump feels, and this is just speculation, I can't read his mind, right? I don't believe he feels comfortable about the topic, meaning that it took me a long time to be able to summarize that complicated topic the way I just did. So I can say, because I've looked into it enough, and Mark Schneider and Michael Schellenberger have helped me a lot to understand that there are different generations of nuclear. The old stuff was dangerous, but we don't make that anymore. The new stuff has never had a problem. And the newer stuff, the Generation 4 stuff that's coming online, can't even melt down if it tried, if they design it the way they're hoping to. They're hoping to design it so that if there's a problem, the new generation will just stop working. They won't melt down because they can't. It won't be, the design won't allow that to happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, Google S2G reactor.
S2G, yeah, okay.
It's Navy's designation for liquid sodium, I think.
Right. So, but you're giving, that's a good example of why I would imagine any politician, and Trump in particular, we're talking about, would not feel comfortable talking about it, because the last thing he wants to do is be up there and say, yeah, I'm all pro-nuclear, and then have somebody ask the question, what about S2G or whatever you just said, and then have him say, I don't even know what that is. Because remember, this topic is really complicated, and it's really hard to boil it down to the old technology was bad. Current technology has never had a problem. Future technology can't have a problem because it will be built so you just couldn't even have a problem, and that we're really close to that. And that's not even fusion. That's just Generation 4. So if you add that to the fact that there's no other source of carbon-free clean energy that's even competitive with nuclear, and the fact that it's very complementary with wind and solar because it fills in the gaps, et cetera, I believe the president could get to a point where he could simplify nuclear down to build the wall. Now, he might have to oversimplify it in the way that build the wall is a gross oversimplification of what immigration requires. But it might be what sells it. So the trick would be how to make President Trump comfortable speaking on the topic in a way that he can shrink the complexity down to a visual, a slogan or something that he can sell, and still not get kneecapped or caught off guard that somebody's got a clever question that he can't handle. So it's sort of a. I can see why he wouldn't want to venture into it, because it's going to scare some people, and it comes from him. It might sound extra scary, etc. But if you imagined Bill Gates meeting with Trump, talking about, and by the way, this would save here's a suggestion for saving the world. Are you ready? I don't believe, or at least I've never heard of this happening, that Bill Gates has ever had a meeting with President Trump while he's president to talk about nuclear power. I don't believe they've ever met to talk about that subject. I'm sure they've met at some point in the past. Yeah. So if they did, that would give Trump all of the, let's say, intellectual cover he would need to go full-throated pro-nuclear. The moment he does it, he wins re-election. And I wouldn't say that about any other topic. There's no other button that's as stark as this one, because it takes climate change off the table, and it's sort of all they got, right?
Yeah.
Because their only scary thing is climate change, and you can't win without scaring the other team. So if you take the scare away, they're disarmed, and the president could do that, but he's got to bring in either a Michael Schellenberger, he's got to bring in a Bill Gates, ideally both of them. And then use that meeting, publicize the meeting, and then after the meeting, do a statement. Bill Gates is standing next to you, and you say, I just met with Bill Gates. I got to say, he's very persuasive. Bill, tell us what we talked about, or tell the people what. Then Bill Gates gets up there and goes, well, and says essentially what I said, which is nuclear is the only way forward, and it's the new stuff that'll bring us there. And then the president says, Bill Gates says this is the way to go. And Bill, would you agree with me that you should do this no matter what you think about climate change? And then Bill Gates says, absolutely, because he would. Because nuclear is the right solution either way. At that point, the election's over. The election's over. It's over. Because if you take climate change off the table, at least in the sense of having the only legitimate plan, that happens, by the way, that happens to match Yang and Cory Booker's plan, and even Biden's plan a little bit. So that's it. That's the end of the conversation. The election is over if Trump meets with Bill Gates and they do a joint statement. That's the end of the conversation. You wouldn't even have to wonder at that point. All right. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good one.
All right. Let's take another one. It's interesting that Bill Gates literally could save the planet if climate change is the risk that people say. Bill Gates could save the planet. Let's take Ken. Ken's got his hoodie on there in the picture, looking dangerous with his beard and his hoodie. Ken, are you there? Hey, do you have a question for me?
Do you believe in climate change?
Do I believe in climate change? Well, yeah. I would not put it in those terms of belief. Here's what I would say. What we know is that many scientists believe it. What we know is that the basic chemistry is probably true, in the sense that there's some elements of climate change which are more credible than others. So the more credible part is that they probably have the physics and the chemistry about right. What is less credible is the economic projections that tell you how much you should care about it. Those seem unlikely to be true. But, and this is the coolest thing about climate change, it doesn't matter. Because what you should be doing is exactly the same whether climate change is real or not, which is getting aggressive with nuclear, staying aggressive with green technology until we can get that as right as possible. Some would argue green isn't as green as it should be, but everything gets better over time. So I think we should be pushing on every door all the time, especially nuclear, because even if there's no climate change risk, if you're in that camp, doesn't matter. You still need lots of energy. And you want clean air, and you don't want to be burning coal, and you'd rather have clean electricity. So nuclear is the answer no matter what. So from a risk management perspective, you can actually say it doesn't matter, because we should be pushing as hard as we can on every one of these technologies. And you have the free market is working on, I think there are at least half a dozen companies, probably 25, I just don't know about them, that are working on various carbon capture technologies. Now, before somebody jumps in and says, the plants need carbon, you can't take the CO2 out of the air because it's plant, oh, rah. Before you say that, let me say that I have confidence in humanity that we would unplug the carbon capture machines if we started taking too much. I think we catch it in time. So the market is basically taking care of the problem, and even if you were to take the worst case scenario by the UN, the most official estimates is that they would decrease our GDP by 10% in 80 years, which we wouldn't even notice, because by then our GDP would be, if things are just normal, if we just go into the future in any way that is recognizably similar to anything that's ever happened in the past, our economy will be about 5 times bigger then. So we'll lose 10% off of what it could have been, but you won't even notice. So we'll have so many resources. We'll have robots that can relocate buildings from the beach. We'll have desalinization that can suck the ocean water out and put it somewhere else. I mean, we'll have so much by then. What's that?
Did you know our government has known about the threat of climate change for 50 years?
Well, the government depends who you're talking about. When you talk about climate change, there's no such thing as the government. There are just lots of government entities with different opinions. And some of them have been that it's going to be too cold and some that it's too warm. I don't subscribe to the theory that because they've been wrong 50 years in a row, which I think is roughly true, the climate predictions have been wrong 50 years in a row. I don't subscribe to the fact that therefore it's wrong now. Unfortunately, that doesn't follow, because there are plenty of examples in history where something wasn't true until it was. We went thousands of years of history where people tried to have human flight, putting wings on themselves and various contraptions, and it never worked until it did. And then one day it worked. Fusion is likely to be like that. We may go 100 years without developing a fusion energy reactor, but then we probably will. The smart people say that it's down to an engineering solution, not even a science solution. Excuse me. So that's my general answer, is that you don't need to solve for whether it's true or false climate change, because all of the solutions are identical either way. Thank you for the question.
Thanks for